Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, Lore and Frey, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. People aren't talking enough about the decline of the PlayStation exclusive in recent years. I remember growing up how I was trained to believe that God of War, Ratchet and Clank, Resistance, Fall of Man, Uncharted were some of the best, most high quality console brands ever. You're never going to find games this good on any other gaming platform. And as an adult, or even as a kid, rather, I kind of naturally gravitated more to the far superior Nintendo exclusives. And now that I'm an adult and can go back and play all these games, playing Sly Cooper again was a really good example of this. I ended up feeling that wow, these PlayStation games really aren't that good at all. I can't imagine anyone being entertained by them or thinking they're funny or engaging or entertaining. If you enjoy PlayStation games, it just means you don't have the experience, the knowledge of better, superior games out there. Wario Land 3 is better than anything that PlayStation Studios has ever put out. Right? And over the past decade, it seems like Sony has really put themselves in a rut. They've really made a really glaring error that I don't think a lot of people have really picked up on. And that is, declaring The Last of Us to be a masterpiece, right? By using the gaming media and corrupt gaming YouTuber shills to promote The Last of Us as one of the best games ever made, Sony established a standard that they themselves could not possibly live up to, right? Every follow-up, from God of War to Days Gone to even the sequel to from the same studio, Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us Part 2, all of them have paled in comparison to the myth, the legend, the iconic original The Last of Us, all right? The Last of Us was hyped so much that Sony cannot live up to its own hype. And as a result of that, following the release of HBO, which had the similar pattern of people praising it and saying it was the greatest thing ever in spite of having no real experience with other TV shows or stories like it. It was the same thing over again. We're at that point now where The Last of Us is kind of the last pillar holding up the myth that PlayStation is a high-quality video game development brand. The Last of Us is the only IP that anyone talks about, anyone cares about, that anyone has any investment in. And it's entirely because of the fake artificial hype regarding the brand and just the publicity it's gotten over the past 10 years, right? Nothing else even competes, right? Horizon Zero Dawn was heavily promoted, heavily shilled, heavily beloved by critics, heavily pushed to compete with Breath of the Wild. And what happens? Because the game can't be allowed to be bigger than The Last of Us, because The Last of Us has to maintain its image as that untouchable masterpiece of video game design or video game storytelling, Horizon never really had a shot. After that year was over, it was shoved to the side and made way for God of War. And that was shoved to the side and made way for Ghost of Tsushima, which nobody talks about at all. And now we're, then that was shoved to the side in favor of The Last of Us Part 2. And The Last of Us Part 2 was disappointing. So even the people who are rabid about The Last of Us, who genuinely thought this was one of the best games ever made, have to deal with the fact that the series has fallen off. Now, I will tell you that the series was never good to begin with. But with the reception that The Last of Us Part 2 got, and with things going the way they are, with the downplay, just the general development structure of Naughty Dog not really talking or not really developing anything other than The Last of Us, with the production of these TV shows, with the shilling and stuff like that, when all is said and done, nobody cares about anything other than The Last of Us. And as a result of that, when The Last of Us reaches its apex, now that it's in decline, what exactly is going to replace it? What exactly is going to live up to the hype that The Last of Us set for itself? I genuinely think that once The Last of Us dies, which I think will come about when Neil Druckmann is thrown from his position at Naughty Dog, when The Last of Us dies And developers are forced to kind of like come up with something new or do something different or like, innovate or be something creative. It's going to be more and more obvious, I think, that PlayStation does not have a leg to stand on when it comes to their first party development studios. Not a single one of them has put out anything relevant in over a decade, right? Like I would say the last good like PlayStation developed exclusive was like Shadow of the Colossus. I'm a big fan of that game. But like generally speaking, when you look at like what Sony's been doing, when you look at like how little their shield campaigns really last, when you look at how stuff like Knack becomes a joke, when you look at just how little enthusiasm people have for PlayStation exclusive titles, like when you realize just how little people actually care about Sony's first party studios, when you really think about that, when you really talk about this, when you really like go dig deep and really research this, like Sony is like the house of cards is about to fall. Like we are at that point where The Last of Us is the only thing keeping the entire brand afloat. And without it, as it like declines in popularity and people start noticing like the problems more and start talking about them more and start realizing that like, hey, this game isn't actually all that much fun. Like when all of that comes together, which is already happening, when all of that comes together, like it's over. Right, there will be no recovery. In fact, I would say like we're in the middle of that process now, in which more people are beginning to realize that like, wow, the show was really not that good. Like The Last of Us Part 2 was really not that good. And like, yeah, you have like your shills coming out and like trying to damage control for the game at all times, but like I don't know how much that works. Like after Cyberpunk 2077 and after The Last of Us Part 2, like I've seen shills like surround themselves with each other and like try and gaslight communities into thinking The Last of Us Part 2 is like a misunderstood masterpiece. But what ends up happening is that like people like me just like don't go to those threads. It's a lot like Undertale. Like, why would I try and tell people that this game is garbage when they have like no intention of listening or respecting me at all? You know what I mean? People will talk shit about The Last of Us again when it's relevant, but right now there's really nothing to talk about. The show has already been forgotten. The Last of Us Part 2 has not been damage controlled in spite of what Naughty Dog wants you to believe, and like the original is just a declining thing. Like if you think back on it, like it's kind of remarkable how the gaming establishment managed to gaslight the community into thinking that the Ocarina, the Zelda formula, was stale and outdated by the time that like Wind Waker came out, or even Majora's Mask. But like The Last of Us has been like going for a decade, and people are still trying to pretend it's like great. It's pathetic. It's sad. People really need to start condemning The Last of Us more.